courtesy, before we begin, I would like you to all turn your phones onto vibrate. Thank you. We're going to begin this morning with the health of our students is always on our minds, and more recently the mental health of our students is something that has really drawn public attention and something we really want to think about and learn about. Today we have some people coming to talk to us, some experts to talk with us about how would we identify what are the warning signs when mental health of a student might be a concern, and what would be a process for following up on that. So with that very brief introduction, I would like to introduce Bob Nassar, who is going to lead this presentation, and he will present his team. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. It's nice to get that extra hour of sleep. My name is Bob Nassar, and my wife and I live in support of our 30-year-old daughter who lives with a diagnosis of schizophrenia. This presentation is very important to me because of my lived experience, and I'll tell a little bit more about that in a little bit. I want to introduce our team. The second presenter today is Allison Payne, and then Patricia Doyle. And first of all, Allison will give us some grounding in some of the facts and information on identifying early warning signs of possible mental health issues such that it can impact a student's performance and their life and their family's life. And then Samantha Hunt. Sam is going to tell, Patricia Doyle is going to tell her story to you from the point of view of a parent living in support of. And Samantha, Sam, will be telling her story as a person living with. So that's it. Let's start at the, remember in the Annie Hall movie with Woody Allen, there was a scene where they were, I can't remember exactly what was being said, but it was something existential, and above the screen flashed author's message. So I was a former high school English teacher, so this is the author's message. I think at the very core of what we're here about today is really trying to look at the world through another person's eyes. And that's not easy to do all the time. We are here to thank you for what you do. If you notice on the first slide, we won a national award for this program. And one of the reasons we won a national award for this program is when I went out to Washington, D.C. to see the Parents and Teachers as Allies workshop from the national organization. I went, uh-oh, here we go again, expecting the teachers to solve all the problems and do the diagnosis work on possible prodromal symptoms or mental health challenges. And I went, no, that's not what this is about. I also was uncomfortable personally with the sort of implied message regarding medicating children. My personal opinion is I think we need to be very, very careful about that. So I pushed back. We pushed back in a respectful and gentle manner, and I want to acknowledge all three of you, but especially Allison Payne, who really provided a lot of the substance for this program. And the national organization, NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, is going to roll out very shortly the new program, and a lot of it will be what you're about to experience today. So thank you for what you do. We're here to raise awareness. Both parents and teachers are in unique positions to help, as a community, identify possible early warning signs. And if someone needs help, please get them some help. It's amazing to us because we are experts. We are the experts in terms of having the lived experience with this. But it really pays to know who do I call? You know, what do I do first? What's the very first step? So we'll help do our best to clarify that for you. And then the other thing, I know when I was a teacher, it was a challenge to really empathize with certain students and make a few modifications in terms of how I taught to help that student succeed in school. So we'll spend a little bit of time sharing some of that kind of information with you. Not evidence-based, research-based types of things, although some of them may be. But it's mainly, you know, as my dad would used to say, using our common sense and integrity. So, and then we will do our best to provide time for questions and answers. Okay? The diagnosis, even though there is hope, the diagnosis of mental illness can be devastating to individuals and families. The suffering can be just incredible. I think you all know what kind of illness. Can someone yell out a couple of, what kinds of brain illnesses might we be talking about? Say it louder. Bipolar, yep. Schizophrenia. Autism. Thank you, you guys got it. Okay, so just a list of some of the brain illnesses that students may experience. The DMDD is a new diagnosis in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, version number 5, Disruptive Mood Dysregulation Disorder. So there's quite a few. And on the tables in the back, we have a bunch of handouts for you. Please feel free to take them. One of the handouts is a 27-page monograph, which goes into some detail on possible symptoms and possible treatments associated with these illnesses. But I want to be very clear, especially with the teachers in this room. Our goal here today is not to teach you to be a diagnostician. Our goal is to teach you or encourage you to, when you know something is amiss, and the student, and Allison will get into more of the details, but for example, a student might not be coming to class. You know, that might be a sign that this person needs some help. Okay, so like I said, these illnesses can be devastating. They can, in some cases, just take away one's sense of life. In my case with my daughter, her symptoms began to show in 8th grade. Nobody diagnosed it. I was totally ignorant about what was going on with my daughter. I thought it was bad behavior. And it wasn't eventually until she was 19 years old that she got that she received a diagnosis. But our life was honestly pure hell. My daughter was almost valedictorian of her high school class, and she went to DePaul University for 3 days, went into psychosis, and has never been back since. And her life she's doing pretty well, all things considered, but her life is a very difficult life. And Allison, I know at our recent Paths to Recovery, you did a wonderful workshop on what to do when your child turns 18. So there are lots of us in this room who might be parents might be wondering about how do I make sure there's a seamless transition from the care that I'm providing now to when they go off to college, or they're independent in a legal sense. So thank you for doing that, Allison. And there's more information on that in the back. And did you want to say anything?
I've produced a document that we will post on our website, and I will try to make it available to the counselors who might be counseling parents as their children are getting ready to go off to college. There's a lot of information in it, so we'll talk about that later if anybody's interested.
Thank you. All right, mental illness is an equal opportunity illness. It can strike anyone, any place, anytime. Unfortunately, Emil Kraepelin in the 1800s, considered one of the fathers of modern psychiatry, used the phrase dementia precox, early onset. Unfortunately, due to, who knows, biological brain development issues perhaps, these types of illness tend to strike when a young person is at the cusp of their life. Okay? I think at the root cause of why treatments are not more, they're not of higher quality, and they're not more available, is the stigma and discrimination associated with these illnesses. There's a lot going on now to try and attack the discrimination associated with mental illness, and anything and everything that we can do, such as sessions like this, and student organizations are doing a lot too. So we think this is at the core. It has been a journey in terms of understanding these illnesses. Honestly, I don't think we really know what they are. We don't have blood tests. We treat symptoms. But we're pretty sure these are biological illnesses. That one, I think we can all sort of agree on. And as Fred Fries, who lives with schizophrenia, says, this is possibly the best time in the history of mankind to have these illnesses because of the treatments and whatnot. Not that they're a good thing to have necessarily, but with the right kinds of treatment and support, people affected by these illnesses, these brain disorders, can lead very rich and fulfilling lives. And so the next slide, I made it last night, and I took it off of, I consider it somewhat of a vision statement, so I want to just say right up front, here's what I think effective and accessible treatment can look like, and it can help. And this is taken from FEP, First Episode Psychosis Research. Outreach, here we are this morning, identifying the early signs of psychosis and engaging youth and families. When one member of your family is ill, your whole family is ill. Family, support, and education. NAMI, Washtenaw County, that's probably one of the things we do best as an organization, is a 12-week family education class. It transformed my life. I went from total ignorance, took the class, and went, oh, so that's what it is. And now we're the first affiliate in the state of Michigan to bring a peer-to-peer 10-week education class for people living with. So education is very, very important. And also we provide support groups, and I'll get into that a little bit more. Peer support. My lived experience is I've been with a number of people who live with serious brain illness, and they have said in my presence, the first time I felt comfortable opening up about my illness was to a certified peer support specialist. It's a real success story in the state of Michigan, and in our community in particular. The state of Michigan has something like over 1,100 certified peer support specialists, and Washtenaw County has quite a few really, really talented certified peer support specialists. Supported education and employment. So again, we can't do this alone. People need an advocate, and they need some kind of support. In terms of the employment, I have a 4-year-old granddaughter, and I've been taking her to the Ann Arbor Hands-On Museum. And she spent a week with us, just her and my wife and I took her to that museum saying, you can do anything you want. You know, we don't have to go to all these exhibits. Just go to whichever one you want. And I don't know if you've been there, but there's the one which is the assembly line with the buckets and the balls. And there are all these kids with the buckets and balls, and they were working. So my takeaway from that is it's just an innate human need to work and find some satisfaction in work. So that's another one. Case management. We don't have enough case managers in our community, and we're advocating for more, and they're hiring and hiring and hiring, but that is a real critical component that as a community, we're working on. Talk therapies, dialectical behavior therapy, cognitive-based therapy, these kinds of things, actually the research is emerging that they work. And all I can tell you, I'm just an N of one with my daughter, but whenever I pick her up after her therapy appointment, she's in a much better place. So I'm pretty convinced that talk therapies have a real role in this. And lastly, and I'm pleased that it is last, because unfortunately I think it's first in a lot of people's minds, but low doses of antipsychotic medication. Again, keep in mind this is psychosis, early warning of psychosis. So this came from the RAISE project, which is a research project that started by McFarland, is the principal investigator, and recovery after initial schizophrenia episode. And we have been lucky in this community through Community Support and Treatment Services, Elizabeth Spring, and Steve Taylor at the Depression Center at the Department of Psychiatry, as part of the RAISE project, to receive a grant to do the Michigan Prevents Prodromal Progression. And even though the grant money has run out, the effort, the funding for that is continuing, and the McFarland has just come out with some pretty stellar research. So, bottom line is we need to go upstream on these illnesses. That is the sort of holy grail, is to try to identify and intervene in an appropriate manner to help our community and to help our students. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Allison, and she's going to take us through some of the important facts and figures. Yeah.
It is on. I teach, so I like having a podium. I don't like this thing, though, because I'm tall enough to do that. Good morning. I live in support of a 19-year-old with serious major depressive disorder. He has attempted college twice. He has lived on the streets 3 times in Ann Arbor, once in Asheville, North Carolina. He has put us through hell. Many parents, when you're in this, and I've gone through training with NAMI through Parents and Teachers as Allies, as well as Family to Family. And it's a very difficult road for the parents. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how parents might react, what parents might see, as well as some of the statistics for teachers. Let me figure out which one it is here. Yep. Okay, pardon me? This one. Is this the, you did this one? Okay. It's going backwards. There you go. Okay. So our mission statement is that we are a nonprofit organization that aims to improve the lives of people with mental health issues. We are providing support and many, many resources on our website. We're in this together. Parents and teachers are in the front line as allies in the battle against mental illness. And I'm going to read some of this because I don't believe that many of you can probably see it in the back. Schools and you as teachers are definitely in a key position to be aware of or be made aware of what's happening with some of your students, perhaps even before their parents. Because in many cases you may see their children much more than the parents see them. We can help, and we want you to know, and we want the parents to know that nobody is alone in this. There are people who have been through it before. Schools face many challenges. Similar to the mental health system, where demand exceeds the capacity to deliver. Class sizes are increasing. You have a lot of students. You have a lot of students that you may or may not get to know very well. Oh, by the way, I also teach, so I recognize some of these things. You may or may not have the training necessary. There's an emphasis on closing the achievement gap, and you're focusing on the academic end of things, and you're supposed to be taking care of a lot of other issues as well. You may not know when you have a mentally ill child with some serious concerns going on right in front of you in your classroom. Your time is already allocated for academics and administrative jobs, and I want you to know that you are not alone. We're not asking you to do more. We are telling you that we are here to help if you have issues. So why is mental illness difficult to diagnose? It's a moving target. Especially with children, defining what's normal in any grade level is very often very difficult. How do you differentiate between willful behavior and symptoms of a brain disorder? It can be hard. There are no conclusive blood tests or x-rays. And indeed, mental illness and the diagnosis of it is an inexact science, and there's a lot of frustration out there with therapists, with doctors, pediatricians. It's hard to find an expert. There just aren't enough people available. Today's situation, and some of these numbers are going to sort of freak you out, I would imagine, or help answer a lot of your ideas already. 21% of youth aged 13 to 18 live with a mental illness severe enough to cause significant impairment in their day-to-day lives. That's approximately 1/5 of all of your students. Let that sink in for a moment. 1/5 of your students may be dealing with a mental health impairment. 50% of lifetime cases of mental illness begin by age 14. The average delay between the onset of symptoms and intervention is 8 to 10 years. It can take a long time to figure this stuff out. And only 50% of youth with mental illness ever receive treatment. Hopefully, those numbers will be increasing with better healthcare options. Untreated mental health can lead to drug and alcohol abuse, violence, school failure, involvement with the criminal justice system, social isolation, homelessness, and suicide. We have the highest dropout rate of any group of students. Approximately 50% will drop out of school. 70% of youth in the state and local juvenile justice systems have mental health issues, with at least 20% experiencing severe symptoms. This is what can happen when they aren't connected with services. Suicide prevention is critical. A suicide in a school, as you may or may not know or have experienced, I hope you haven't, can cause an awful lot of trauma and drama for many students and families. It is the third leading cause of death in young adults aged 15 to 24. 90% of those who commit suicide had an underlying mental illness. The data from Washtenaw County in 2006, right here, indicate 16%, oops, there it is, 16% of high school students had suicidal thoughts. 12% had suicide plans. 12% of your students planning to kill themselves. 9% have had suicide attempts that you may or may not know about. Their parents may or may not know about. 3% of students have required medical attention after an attempt. Common warning signs. Talking about hopelessness, worthlessness, being a burden to others, feeling trapped or having no reason to live. Having no motivation or losing interest. You may notice that your students have stopped participating, have stopped coming to class. Withdrawing or feeling isolated. Sudden change in personality or behaviors. Perhaps they used to be a star athlete and all of a sudden they decide they don't want to participate in their sport anymore. Red flag. Giving away possessions and behaving recklessly. Talking about death or not being here tomorrow. Sometimes they're posting things like that on Facebook, and that's a good indicator. Looking for ways to kill oneself, such as searching online for different methods. Or carrying a gun. These signs require immediate attention, and there are suicide phone numbers. I'm sure that there's information on our tables. Take them seriously. Call Access in our area, 734-544-3050 or 1-800-440-7548. That's on the handout. And I strongly suggest that every person write down and have the suicide prevention phone number with you at all times, just in case you want to pass it on to somebody. This year, I discovered that one of my son's friends was suicidal. Because I check my son's phone every chance I can get, and found out that a young man was suicidal. I didn't know his last name, I'd never met him. I texted him, this is Dean, my son's name, his mom. Are you okay? Do you need help? Here's the suicide number. He said, yeah, I think I'm okay, I might call. That's all I can do, but get involved. Today's situation, a summary. Brain disorders affect approximately 15% of adolescents. 1/5 of all adolescents. Schools are not mental health facilities. We don't expect you to be. You do have some training and some people with extra training, but you're in a perfect position to help recommend to parents that they might seek treatment. Treatment works. Families need access to an array of effective mental health services. Children represent 100% of our future. So, the 10 warning signs of a mental illness. Feeling very sad or withdrawn for more than 2 weeks at a time, crying, feeling fatigued, feeling unmotivated, seriously trying to harm or kill oneself, or even just making plans to do so. Severe out-of-control risk-taking behaviors, sudden overwhelming fear for no apparent reason or discomfort, physical symptoms. My son in 7th grade got intense stomach ache so bad that he could barely move. The pain was real. I took him to the U of M emergency room and they could diagnose nothing. They thought that he was having appendicitis. It was anxiety. Not eating, throwing up, using laxatives to lose weight, significant weight loss or weight gain, anorexia and bulimia are indeed mental health issues. Severe mood swings causing trouble in relationships, repeated use of drugs or alcohol, especially if this has come on suddenly, is a sign that they are self-medicating. Drastic changes in behavior or sleeping patterns. Extreme difficulty in concentrating or in staying still that puts a demand on the students such that they're not doing well in school. Severe ADHD, ADD all group into this. And intense worries or fears. Pay attention to the severity and the duration of these things. Sometimes it's a very short-lived thing, but if they continue for more than 2 weeks, please take notice. So, assessing the expertise of school personnel. Who are they and how can they help? You as teachers are on the front line, and as teachers, parents may be coming to you for information, so I hope you've picked up some of the information out there. Counselors can help with course selection, of course, and may be relied on for more than that. I direct school counselors. College students, but they've reached back now into the high schools to help parents guide their children, especially when making the college selection process go easier. And I have borrowed and used a lot of that information. That's a very good website. School social workers should be aware of the local resources, and NAMI on our website has an awesome multi-page booklet that lists all of the local resources as well as many national resources. It's very handy to have at a desk. School psychologists there for empathy, but again, we recognize some parents may not understand that we don't believe that school psychologists are actually there for therapy and are not going to provide therapy, but they could directly direct a parent to a therapist perhaps, or to seeking therapy. And then, of course, the head of special ed with extra training in various student mental health issues could probably be a good resource. Not all schools, of course, have professionals in each capacity, but knowing where to find it within the district would be very helpful to the parents. For parents, what you might want to tell parents, because when parents first start with all of this, they're going to start freaking out. So if you, as a school counselor, as a teacher, can reassure parents that whatever's going on isn't their fault, that is handy. Trust your instincts. Tell the parents that they should indeed, if they think something different is going on, trust their instincts and take their child to a doctor. Seek medical treatment. Thyroid tests. Thyroid imbalances can sometimes bring on some severe depression. Strep throat can actually bring on some OCD behaviors. So starting with a pediatrician is a good place to start. As well as getting a referral to a therapist or a psychiatrist and using the NAMI resources. NAMI of Washtenaw County, www.nami.wc.org has lots and lots and lots of resources, so use it. Again, for the parents, there are therapies such as DBT, which is called dialectical behavior therapy, which is rather new, but right here in the Ann Arbor area, we do have two DBT centers, where there's individual counseling as well as group classes. There's also DBT at the University of Michigan Depression Center, and CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapies. Those are acronyms that get thrown around and parents may not have a clue what they are, but they are different treatment modalities, but they are showing a lot of usefulness with children. And there are NAMI classes and support groups in the area, and we urge you to seek those out. They are free. The 12-week class gives you a big binder full of resources, and it is a free class. Communication with the schools is key for parents to communicate with administrators, communicate with teachers. They need to feel comfortable that their privacy will be protected, but parents do need to know that they can communicate and should communicate to let teachers know what is going on, and vice versa. The parents are there as their child's advocate. They're their child's strongest advocate, so they need to empower themselves with information. For the parents, they need to listen to their children, ask how they could help with school stress. There are many ways. Ask for a meeting with the guidance counselor. Consider changing their expectations, and this is a huge one because if a parent is all of a sudden hit with, gee, my kid's different, how can I handle this? I don't want my kid to be different. There's a lag time between understanding and actually how they process the information and deal with their children and deal with the schools. Because of the stigma of mental health issues, many parents will want to hide it, suppress it, not talk about it, not deal with it. As you as teachers know, the stress on kids all the way through, I think it starts in about 7th grade. You have to do well, you have to keep your GPA up, you have to get into Michigan, you want to be able to go to a good college, repeated over and over again, year after year after year. Where are you going to go to school, blah, blah, blah. can put an intense amount of stress on students. But indeed, there's no problem with delaying taking the ACT, taking a gap year. It's very, very common in Europe and other places for students after high school to work for a year, go into a training program for a year, volunteer for a year. There's nothing that says we have to push, like we have been perhaps, for students to go to college quite so early. Some students may not be suited for college. Perhaps going into a training program is a better idea. Even the pressure of the ACT. Don't take them all at once. Delay it a little bit. Take a training class. Get a tutor to help you with it. Those are all ideas to decrease their stress. Decrease the course load. Even within high schools, I believe in most districts, there are ways that you could decrease the amount of courses and just take the bare minimum for graduation. Parents should be encouraged to check into that, and we should keep an open mind about it. Schools can definitely help destigmatize mental health issues and take the stress off that issue so that parents can deal with it more directly. Recognize that you're going to get denial and anger from parents, especially in the early stages of recognizing that there's something different going on with their child, and that it is going to be a process. Above and beyond everything else, communicating empathy and compassion for the parents and for the children who are going through something can make or break a family. Having gone through this myself, there were some fantastic teachers and counselors in the Dexter School District, and there were some who just didn't get it. I hope that after having this presentation and training, you're not one of those teachers who just doesn't get it. Just having empathy. It doesn't cost you anything to have empathy and to listen to your students and your parents, as I'm sure, hopefully you all do anyway, but some teachers are better than others. Emphasize that early treatment and intervention can make a difference for your child's success, whether it's academic success, social success, just general success in life. The treatments, the therapies, therapy alone is good. Therapy sometimes combined with pharmaceuticals is even better. Be sensitive to parents with special needs and concerns. And there may be financial concerns, but we are in a county that does have a lot of resources available to lower income parents, and they can take advantage of those. Provide parents with resources. Tell them that education is the key to understanding. Provide some pamphlets for them. Provide a website for them to go to. The school may also have a plan for students with a mental health crisis. Does your school have a plan? As a teacher, perhaps you could ask about that. Does your school have a policy for online learning? Some students are so overcome that they can't attend school, but perhaps for a semester they could stay at home and do some online classes. Describe the bare minimum graduation requirements, and throughout the entire procedure, be sure to tell your parents that there is confidentiality in all the steps of this. You're not going to be chit-chatting in the teacher's room or to other students about their child. Short-term and long-term planning for student success. Maybe they're on a different path to graduation. It might take longer. That doesn't mean their child can't graduate. So what should you do? Connect with the parents and consider recommending that they start with the student's family physician. Inform appropriate school personnel, like the guidance counselor. Educate yourselves is the big one here, and make sure that you have access to resources when a parent comes and asks you. You are not expected, as Bob said over and over, nobody's expecting you to diagnose or treat any student in your classroom who has an issue. But the recognition that there might be something going on and sending them to the appropriate medical personnel for treatment is what we are suggesting. Suggest that parents consider wellness practices that might help relieve symptoms, such as decreasing stimulation, decreasing, being critical of that student. You can't shout it out of them, is one of my sayings, because you just can't. It won't work. Cutting down on screen time has been recommended, and spending more quiet time. Sleep is very critical. If they're staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning online and then trying to get up for 8 o'clock in the morning, it's not going to work. And always incorporating outdoor activity and exercise into a child's life is going to help, as well as diet. And there are many studies to indicate that certain foods can cause certain issues. Ensuring adequate protein. Is there a gluten or dairy allergy? We have some wonderful information on the NAMI website about alternatives to consider. And for the local resources, please see our handouts, and don't be afraid to ask for help. For each teacher, keeping note of who a parent in the school district might want to start with. Who is the resource person in your district that you could direct a family to is a crucial point. And who would be your suggested first contact in the school district? We're now going to hear from Pat Doyle with a parent's story so that you can understand a little bit better what it might be like as the parent.
Thank you, Allison. Before or as Pat comes up and talks, just one comment. We decided to leave in some of the slides that we share with parents because if 25% of our population lives with some kind of a serious brain illness, we figured some of the people in this room may be parents of a student, of a child. So we wanted to be sure to make that point. Pat Doyle is our former president of the NAMI Washtenaw County affiliate, and I've learned a tremendous amount from her, and one of them is grace, and I think you'll be able to be seeing that. Thank you, Pat.
Okay, thank you, Bob. So my name is Patricia Doyle, and I am the parent of an adult son who lives with a diagnosis of schizoaffective disorder. Schizoaffective disorder is a mood and a thought disorder, and it's probably one of the most chronic and serious of the mental illnesses, but it's very treatable. I also want to mention that, you know, I am not a professional, I am a parent, and what I've learned with our organization, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, is that we are all peers. So in other words, I'm up here speaking to you, but we're all in the same boat. In other words, the only difference is that I've had some lived experience, and I've been in the organization as a volunteer for a number of years, so that makes me able to provide some information. I've been to some trainings, and I've learned some things from other people. I've learned it from my own experience, and I've learned it through my experience with NAMI. So I think that's an important aspect of this also. And as a parent, it's important to know too that most parents are right and most parents' instincts are correct. So that if you have a parent that comes to you that may recognize something different about their child, or that their child is struggling, that it's really important that you understand that most instincts are correct. It's that gut feeling. And so over the years, what I learned through helping my child through the school system was that mostly when I thought there was a problem, and there was something going on, normally my instincts were correct. So I'm going to relate to you kind of my journey as a parent through the school system, but I also want to mention that this was back in the 90s that my son was in college and high school, so things have changed, things have gotten better, there's much more awareness than there used to be. So some of my experience may not reflect the experiences parents may have today, but I think the journey is the same anyways. So my child in elementary school was mostly showing signs of his early mental illness through hyperactivity. So he was unable to concentrate, had trouble sitting still, was the class clown. But fortunately, his IQ was, he had a pretty high IQ, which kind of helped him overcome some of all of this that he missed in the classroom because he was distracted or fidgety. And so that was kind of my experience when he was in elementary school. And through it all, you know, naively, my husband and I always thought that maybe this was something that he would outgrow, that he was maybe immature, that it would change, and that he would evolve, and somehow, when he got older, he would be able to settle down. When he went to middle school, the situation was different, and I really believe that this is when some of these symptoms of his mental illness really became more obvious and more profound. But the brain develops at a different pace than the body does. So the brain really is not fully developed until a child is in a late adolescence, early adulthood. So that's why a lot of these significant symptoms, what we call prodromal symptoms, and the inability to function become much more pronounced in adolescence and early adulthood. So in middle school, my son began to have more serious problems because at this point he was required to do more independent study, to complete assignments on time. He didn't have the teachers just expected more of him in middle school. And this is when he really began to have difficulties. It was difficult for him to organize his work, to plan ahead. And little did I know at the time that these were all symptoms of a mental illness. My husband and I had no idea what was going on. So we became really concerned, really worried. We weren't really sure what to do, but we did know that he was going to go on to high school, and if he was having trouble in middle school, high school was going to be even more difficult for him. So still not knowing what it was or what to do, we decided, well, maybe if we put him in a private school where the classes were small, more individualized attention, that maybe, just maybe, the academic part would come back, he would be able to do better and flourish. So we did. We sent him to a private school, and you know, as I look back, it was probably one of the worst things we could have done at the time because there was much more that was required of him at that point. He lasted through 9th grade and then, of course, was dismissed because of his grades, and he was expected to do a lot more independent study at that point. So after the 9th grade, again, as parents, we were thinking, oh my gosh, you know, what did we do here? We felt somehow, even though nobody told us this, there wasn't a teacher or counselor that ever put any blame on us, but we felt as parents that somehow we failed. What didn't we do? What should we have done that we didn't do? How could we have changed the course? If I had known then what I know now, I would have realized that there was some interventions we could have used, but we really couldn't change the course of his illness. There was nothing we could do to prevent him from developing this brain disorder. There was really nothing we could have done. So after his 9th grade and failing, we sent him back to the public school. He continued to struggle there, and most teachers, not all, but there were many that really thought that some of his symptoms were willful behavior on his part. But one of the most painful aspects, I think, as a parent was being unable to help and not knowing what to do and feeling some kind of blame and shame for what was going on with our son. So some of the symptoms for him were he loved sports, he loved track, he loved basketball. It was very difficult for him to even be involved in those because he wasn't sure where he was supposed to be at a certain time. He was distracted, sometimes unable to listen to directions. So as a result, we could see that really he was losing a lot of confidence. His self-esteem was taking a nosedive. And I guess the worst part was that I could see that he was losing out academically, and he was also going through adolescence, you know, chronologically as he went through adolescence, he was missing out on some of those important stages of development that young people go through. And I guess there were a few things while he was in high school that did help. And one was that the school counselor came to us and said, I really think what might help your son is for him to get some private therapy and some counseling. So we did do that, and that helped him tremendously. I really feel that that individual counseling was able to help him get through high school. The other thing that was suggested that helped was the career centers. So he left the regular high school for certain parts of the day, and he would go over to the career center, which was kind of a vocational VOTEC type situation where he wasn't sitting in a classroom, he wasn't having to sit still and focus, but he could work with his hands. And that helped him tremendously, gave him some more self-confidence. Summer school was also recommended, so he did some remedial work in the summers, and that helped. But with all of this, it took him 5 years to get through high school. But we were so proud when he was able to graduate. And something significant happened, which I've heard about this and I've read about this, and then when I look back, I realize it happened to our son. In some cases, for some odd reason, when adolescents are developing this brain disorder, they have a remission of symptoms. It's almost like the illness vanishes and they're able to function and do well, but it doesn't last long. And I didn't know this at the time, but he wanted to go to college, so we sent him to a local community college, Schoolcraft in Livonia, and he was on the dean's list for a year. After struggling through high school and taking 5 years, we thought, oh my gosh, this was the best year of his life. And we thought, oh my gosh, so he's better now. Finally, he's better. He's going to do okay. He's going to move on, and his troubles are behind him. But it only lasted a year, and he wanted to go away to school. He had an older sister that was in college at the time, living away. So still, my husband and I were in the dark. We had no idea what was going on with him, really. And we sent him away to college, which was a huge mistake because he didn't do well. His symptoms reappeared after that. So at that point, within a couple years, he was diagnosed. He was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. And at the time, it was really, really devastating for us and for our family. We felt hopeless and helpless. We didn't know where to turn. We didn't know how to help him. We had no idea what to do next. And ironically, we went to a wedding in North Carolina, and I was sitting at a table next to a woman who I didn't know, but I met just because we happened to be seated next to each other. And she told me about her daughter who had bipolar disorder and about this wonderful 12-week family education class that her and her husband had took that was life-changing for them. So we came back and enrolled in the family education course, and absolutely was life-changing. Because knowledge is power. And once we understood what we were dealing with, then we were able to advocate and help our son in the best possible way. But more importantly, we learned empathy, and we also learned patience. And all of those things were such a huge asset. So I would recommend that if you have any parents that are struggling with their student, to recommend they come to this 12-week family education. Even if they don't have a diagnosis, if it's obvious that the child is struggling, at some point just learning about some of the symptoms and that can be so helpful. So what were some of the early warning signs, looking back, that we saw with our son? It was the attention deficit disorder. It was depression in high school. It was struggling with academics. A change in sleep habits, where he was staying up later at night, but then falling asleep during the day. His involvement with different friends who are also struggling like he was. A perpetual sadness that kind of took over his life at the time, and his loss of interest in things that he once was very interested in, like sports. So my son is now doing okay. He's always lived independently. He is able to work some, and he volunteers. He has a peer group. So what I want to stress is that mental illness is treatable and recovery is possible. So what does recovery look like? So when a young person goes through these years of struggle and they come out the other end, what does recovery look like? Recovery looks like hope. It looks like some confidence in the future, that they have some hopes and dreams, that there's some happiness in their life, that they're able to be independent, to find their own peer group. Because through all of this, there is a point where they lose their identity. So it's called a loss of identity, where that person who had dreams and hopes for the future has to figure out a different life for themselves based on this chronic mental illness. So I want to thank you for coming today. I want to thank you for letting me share this experience with you as a parent, and hope that you will look into the eyes of other parents and be able to understand where they're coming from. And if this can make the difference in the lives of some students, it may prevent them from losing many years of their adolescent development and years of loss of academics. Because if treatment, if there's early intervention and treatment, it can really make a difference. it can help that young person accept and understand their illness better, and in all ways will improve their life. Thank you so much.